Margaret sits alone at her kitchen table, staring at the single candle flickering on a small cupcake. The silence feels heavy, broken only by the steady tick of the grandfather clock in the hallway. 10 years ago, this day would have been filled with laughter, the sound of her son David's voice echoing through these same walls as he sang happy birthday off-key, just like when he was a child. She closes her eyes and can almost hear the phantom sounds of celebrations past. The rustle of wrapping paper, the clatter of dishes as family gathered around her dining room table, the warmth of embraces that made her feel like the center of someone's universe. David used to call her every year without fail, sometimes flying across 3 states just to spend her birthday weekend together, bringing flowers and stories from his life. But those days feel like they belong to someone else's life now. The phone hasn't rung with his voice for exactly 10 years, not since that terrible argument that seemed to tear their relationship apart at the seams. She can still remember the harsh words they exchanged, the way he stormed out of her house, and how the door seemed to slam shut on more than just that particular evening. Margaret blows out the candle and watches the thin ribbon of smoke curl upward, carrying with it another year of hope that maybe, just maybe, today would be different. She stopped expecting the call, but somehow her heart still jumps every time the phone rings, only to sink when it's a telemarketer or her concerned neighbor checking in on her well-being. The cupcake sits untouched as she begins to clear the table, her movements slow and deliberate. Each birthday that passes feels like another door closing, another chance for reconciliation slipping away into the vast silence that has become her constant companion. Yet somewhere deep in her heart, a small flame of hope continues to burn, refusing to be extinguished by time or disappointment. The house creaks around Margaret as she moves through her evening routine, each sound amplified by the emptiness that seems to press against the walls. She pauses at David's old bedroom door, her hand resting on the brass handle she polished just last week, though no one has opened this door in years. Inside, everything remains exactly as he left it during his last visit, a shrine to the relationship that once was. She pushes the door open and steps inside, breathing in the faint scent of his cologne that somehow still lingers on his old sweater hanging in the closet. The room tells the story of their bond through photographs scattered across his desk, Little League trophies gathering dust on the windowsill, and the birthday cards she used to give him, saved in a shoebox under his bed. Margaret picks up a framed photo from his nightstand, showing the two of them at his college graduation. His arm is wrapped around her shoulders, both of them beaming with pride and possibility. She traces his face through the glass, wondering how that smiling young man became a stranger who could let 10 birthdays pass without a single word, not even a text message or card. The silence in the room feels different from the rest of the house, heavier somehow, weighted with all the conversations they never had and all the forgiveness that hangs suspended between them like morning mist. She remembers how he used to confide in her about everything, from his first heartbreak to his dreams of starting his own business, back when she was his first phone call for both celebrations and crises. Now she finds herself wondering if he even remembers her birthday, or if the date has been deliberately erased from his calendar along with her phone number. The uncertainty gnaws at her more than anger ever could, because at least anger would mean he still thinks about her, still feels something in the space where their relationship used to live. Every morning, Margaret follows the same careful routine that has sustained her through these 10 years of silence. She brews her coffee in the blue mug David gave her for Mother's Day 20 years ago, sits in her favorite chair by the window, and watches the neighborhood come alive, with the sounds of families beginning their day, children walking to school, parents calling out reminders about lunch money and soccer practice. The Hendersons next door have 3 grown children who visit every Sunday, filling their driveway with cars and their backyard with the sound of grandchildren playing. Margaret watches them through her lace curtains, not out of envy, but out of a deep longing that has become as familiar as her own heartbeat, a reminder of what used to be and what might still be possible. She's memorized the patterns of her neighbors' lives, knows which houses receive regular visits and which ones, like hers, stand quiet and waiting. Mrs. Chen across the street gets a call from her daughter in California every Tuesday evening at 6 o'clock sharp. The young couple, 2 doors down, has parents who babysit their toddler every Friday night, creating a weekly celebration of connection that Margaret observes like a student of love. Sometimes she catches herself reaching for the phone to call David, her fingers dialing the first 3 digits of his number before she remembers that the last time she tried, 2 years ago, the number had been disconnected. She doesn't even know where he lives now, whether he's married, if he's happy, if he's safe, or if he ever thinks about the mother who raised him with every ounce of love she possessed. But still, she keeps his coffee mug in the cabinet, washed and ready. Still, she buys his favorite cookies at the grocery store, just in case. Still, she practices in her mind what she would say if he called, how she would keep her voice steady and welcoming, how she would resist the urge to ask why he stayed away so long, and instead simply tell him how much she loves him. Margaret's living room has become an unintentional museum of their relationship, every surface holding photographs that chronicle David's journey from infant to man. The mantelpiece displays his school pictures in chronological order, creating a timeline of gap-toothed grins evolving into the confident smile of a college graduate, each image a window into moments when their future together seemed limitless and secure. She dusts these frames religiously, her cloth moving gently across glass that protects memories more precious than any treasure. Here is David at age 7, missing his front teeth, holding up a drawing he made of the two of them standing under a rainbow. There he is at 16, awkward in his prom tuxedo, rolling his eyes as she insisted on taking just one more picture before his date arrived. The photo albums stacked on her coffee table contain thousands more moments, carefully preserved and labeled in her neat handwriting. Birthday parties, Christmas mornings, vacation trips to the lake, where they used to rent a cabin every summer until he graduated high school and life began pulling him in different directions, though neither of them imagined those directions would lead him completely away from her. She often finds herself sitting with these albums spread across her lap, running her fingers over pictures of David learning to ride his bicycle, blowing out birthday candles, opening presents with the enthusiasm only children can muster. In every photo, she can see herself in the background or reflection, always smiling, always focused entirely on his happiness, as if it were her own lifeline to joy. The most painful album is the last one, ending abruptly with photos from his 28th birthday party, the final celebration before everything changed. She can see the tension in their forced smiles even then, can recognize the signs of the argument that was building like storm clouds on the horizon, though she had no idea it would be the storm that would wash away everything they had built together. Margaret has learned to speak the subtle language of loneliness, a dialect understood only by those who measure their days in silence and their nights in the echo of their own footsteps. She talks to herself now, not out of confusion, but out of necessity, her voice the only sound that can break through the oppressive quiet that seems to grow thicker with each passing year. She holds entire conversations with David's photograph, telling him about her day, sharing news from the neighborhood, asking for his advice on decisions both big and small, just as she did when he was young, and she was his primary source of wisdom and comfort. Sometimes she catches herself setting 2 places at the dinner table, her muscle memory refusing to accept that she eats alone now. The phone has become both her greatest source of hope and her deepest disappointment. Every ring sends her heart racing with the possibility that today might be the day David remembers her, that today might be the voice will travel through the wires to reach her waiting ear, carrying with it all the love and apology she's been dreaming of receiving. But the calls are always wrong numbers, telemarketers, or well-meaning friends who mean well but can never fill the specific David-shaped hole in her heart. She's become expert at keeping her voice cheerful during these conversations, at pretending that her life is full and satisfying, at hiding the truth that every day feels like a rehearsal that will never open. The hardest part is not the silence itself, but the way it makes her question everything she thought about love and motherhood. Was she a good mother? Did she somehow fail him in ways she can't identify? Does unconditional love mean anything if the person you love unconditionally can simply walk away and never look back? Today marks exactly 10 years since David's last birthday call, and Margaret finds herself treating this anniversary with the same solemnity others might reserve for memorial services. She's calculated the math obsessively, counting not just years, but months, weeks, and days since she last heard her son's voice speaking her name with anything resembling affection or even basic acknowledgement of their shared history. She remembers that final conversation with painful clarity, how it started warm and familiar, David calling to thank her for the birthday check she'd sent, their voices carrying the easy rhythm of a lifetime of connection. But somehow the conversation shifted, old grievances surfacing like debris after a storm, accusations flying between them with a cruelty that still takes her breath away when she replays it in her mind. The argument had been about his father, about the divorce that happened when David was 15, about loyalty and blame, and all the ways that broken marriages can shatter children even when they're nearly adults. David accused her of poisoning him against his father, while she tried desperately to explain that she'd only ever wanted to protect him from disappointment and pain, never imagining her protection might feel like manipulation. She can still hear the moment when his voice turned cold, when her little boy disappeared entirely and was replaced by a stranger who spoke to her with a distance that felt like death. The click of the phone hanging up had echoed through her house for days afterward, a sound that seemed to announce the beginning of a new chapter in her life, one written entirely in silence and regret. Every year since then, his birthday has become a day of mourning for Margaret, not because he died, but because the relationship they shared seemed to die in that moment, leaving her to grieve for someone who continued living his life somewhere beyond her reach, unreachable, and apparently unmissing her as much as she misses him every single day. Margaret has become intimately familiar with the rhythms of other people's happiness, watching from her window as neighbors live the life she once took for granted. The Peterson family, 3 houses down, has a son who visits every Saturday morning, always bringing coffee and pastries from the bakery downtown, always staying for at least 2 hours, their laughter drifting across the yards like music she can no longer play. She's memorized the license plates of her neighbors' adult children, can predict which weekends will bring visitors and which ones will leave certain houses as quiet as her own. There's a strange comfort in knowing she's not the only one who waits, though most of the other waiting seems to be rewarded eventually with the sound of car doors slamming and voices calling out greetings across driveways. The hardest moments come during holidays, when the neighborhood transforms into a showcase of family connection. Christmas lights frame windows where multiple generations gather around dinner tables, Easter brings egg hunts with squealing grandchildren, and Mother's Day turns every yard into a parade of flowers and hugs and cards read aloud on front porches for all the world to witness and celebrate. Margaret has learned to time her grocery shopping trips to avoid these family moments, has mastered the art of being invisible during the times when her childlessness feels most obvious and painful. She's developed relationships with store clerks and librarians, people who know her name and ask about her day, but don't require explanations for why she buys single-serving meals or why she lingers in public spaces longer than most people her age. But even these casual relationships carry the weight of her secret, the truth that she has a son somewhere in the world who has chosen not to love her, or at least not to express that love in any way she can recognize. She wonders if people can sense her abandonment, if loneliness has a scent that follows her through her daily routines like perfume that can't be washed off. Margaret's house has slowly transformed itself into a monument to absence, each room holding the shape of David's missing presence like negative space in a sculpture. The kitchen still contains his favorite cereal, expired now, but somehow too final to throw away. His coffee mug sits clean and ready in the cabinet, positioned exactly where he used to reach for it during his weekend visits when he still came home regularly. The living room couch bears a permanent impression where he used to sit during Sunday afternoon football games, calling out plays to the television while she puttered around him, straightening magazines and bringing him snacks, delighting in the luxury of having someone to take care of, someone who wanted to be in her space and share her time without needing to be anywhere else. Even the garage holds evidence of their severed connection. His old bicycle hangs from hooks he installed during high school. The tire's flat now, but the frame's still solid, waiting for rides that will never come. His baseball glove sits on a shelf next to camping equipment they used for father-son-mother trips back when David was young and divorce was still years in the future, and their family felt unbreakable. She finds herself talking to these objects sometimes, addressing David's empty chair at the dinner table, apologizing to his photograph for mistakes she may have made, explaining her side of arguments they had years ago, as if he might somehow hear her through the walls that separate them now, across whatever physical and emotional distance has grown between them, like a canyon too wide to cross. The house itself seems to echo with phantom sounds, her memory so strong that she sometimes hears his key in the lock, his voice calling, "Mom, I'm home," from the front hallway, his footsteps on the stairs as he bounds up 2 at a time, the way he did when he was young and eager and still believed his mother was one of the most important people in his universe. 10 years feels like both a lifetime and a moment, depending on how Margaret chooses to measure the time that has passed since David's voice disappeared from her daily experience. She marks this anniversary not with celebration, but with a quiet acknowledgement that she has somehow survived a decade of not knowing whether her son is happy, healthy, successful, struggling, or even alive, though she assumes someone would notify her if something terrible had happened. The woman who began this journey 10 years ago was different from the one who sits here now, aged not just by time, but by the particular weight that comes from carrying unanswered love. She's learned things about herself she never wanted to know, discovered reserves of strength she never knew she possessed, developed coping mechanisms that would have seemed impossible when David's absence was still fresh and shocking and felt like a temporary misunderstanding rather than a permanent condition. She stopped expecting him to call on her birthday, though hope continues to flutter in her chest like a bird that refuses to migrate despite the changing seasons. She stopped checking her mailbox with anticipation during Christmas and Mother's Day, though she still sends him cards to his last known address, never receiving confirmation that they reach him, but unable to stop the ritual of reaching out into the void where her son lives his life without her. The 10th anniversary of their silence feels significant in ways she can't quite articulate, like a milestone that deserves recognition even though it marks loss rather than achievement. A decade seems long enough to prove that this separation isn't temporary, that whatever broke between them was damaged beyond her ability to repair, though she's never stopped believing that love should be stronger than pride or hurt feelings or misunderstandings about the past. Margaret finds herself wondering if David marks this anniversary too, if he remembers the exact date of their last conversation, if he ever picks up the phone to call her before changing his mind, if he thinks about her on quiet Sunday afternoons or during moments when he needs advice or comfort, or simply wants to hear the voice of someone who loved him before he was even born. The phone rings on a Tuesday evening in March, cutting through the silence of Margaret's house with the same sharp insistence as always. But something about this ring feels different, charged with an energy she can't identify, but somehow recognizes in her bones. She moves toward it with her usual measured pace, expecting another automated call about her car warranty or a friendly volunteer asking for a donation to the local fire department. But when she lifts the receiver to her ear, the voice that greets her makes her knees buckle, forces her to grab the kitchen counter for support, as 10 years of silence shatter in a single moment. "Mom?" The word is tentative, rough with emotion, carrying with it the weight of a decade of absence and what sounds like a lifetime of regret compressed into 2 small syllables. Margaret's mouth opens but no sound emerges, her brain struggling to process that the voice she's been dreaming of hearing is actually traveling through the phone line, that David's voice is in her kitchen, that after all these years of one-sided conversations with his photograph, he's actually here, waiting for her to respond, to confirm that she remembers him and still wants to hear from him after so much time has passed. "David?" she finally whispers, his name feeling foreign and familiar on her tongue, like a prayer she's been practicing for years, finally being spoken aloud in the presence of something divine. The silence that follows stretches between them like a bridge neither is sure is strong enough to hold the weight of their accumulated hurt and love and desperate need for reconciliation. "I know I don't deserve to call you," his voice continues, cracking with emotion that makes him sound like the little boy who used to cry in her arms after nightmares, who used to beg her to check under his bed for monsters, who used to believe she could fix anything that was broken in his world simply because she loved him enough to try. David's voice pours through the phone like water through a broken dam. 10 years of suppressed emotion flowing out in a torrent of words that Margaret strains to absorb. Her heart racing as she tries to understand how her son became this stranger who sounds so wounded, so different from the confident young man who walked out of her life with such finality a decade ago. "I've been calling your number for 3 hours, he admits, his voice thick with tears she can hear but not see. "Hanging up before it could ring because I was terrified you wouldn't want to hear from me, terrified that I'd waited too long, that you'd moved on, that you decided you were better off without a son who could disappear for 10 years like some kind of coward." The words tumble out faster now, as if he's afraid that stopping will give him a chance to lose his courage and hang up again, leaving them both stranded on opposite sides of the silence that has defined their relationship for so long. He tells her about the shame that has kept him away, about the depression that followed his divorce, about the business failure that left him feeling like he disappointed everyone who ever believed in him. "I couldn't face you," he continues, his breathing ragged with emotion. "Every time I thought about calling, I imagined having to tell you that everything had fallen apart, that I wasn't the success you raised me to be, that I turned into the kind of man who runs away when things get difficult instead of fighting through them like you taught me to do when I was young." Margaret listens with tears streaming down her face, her free hand pressed against her heart as if she can somehow hold it together long enough to hear everything he needs to say. She wants to interrupt, to tell him that nothing he could have done would have made her love him less, but she senses that he needs to empty himself of these words he's been carrying alone for so long. "I thought about you every single day," David continues, his voice growing stronger as he speaks, as if confession is giving him back pieces of himself he'd forgotten existed. "Every birthday, every Christmas, every Mother's Day, I would write you letters I never sent, buy you cards I never mailed, practice phone conversations I never had the courage to actually make because I was so afraid you'd tell me it was too late, that I'd hurt you too badly to ever come back." The words tumble out faster now, as if he's afraid that stopping will give him a chance to lose his courage and hang up again, leaving them both stranded on opposite sides of the silence that has defined their relationship for so long. He tells her about the shame that has kept him away, about the depression that followed his divorce, about the business failure that left him feeling like he'd disappointed everyone who ever believed in him. "I couldn't face you," he continues, his breathing ragged with emotion. "Every time I thought about calling, I imagined having to tell you that everything had fallen apart, that I wasn't the success you raised me to be, that I turned into the kind of man who runs away when things get difficult instead of fighting through them like you taught me to do when I was young." Margaret listens with tears streaming down her face, her free hand pressed against her heart as if she can somehow hold it together long enough to hear everything he needs to say. She wants to interrupt, to tell him that nothing he could have done would have made her love him less, but she senses that he needs to empty himself of these words he's been carrying alone for so long. "I thought about you every single day," David continues, his voice growing stronger as he speaks, as if confession is giving him back pieces of himself he'd forgotten existed. "Every birthday, every Christmas, every Mother's Day, I would write you letters I never sent, buy you cards I never mailed, practice phone conversations I never had the courage to actually make because I was so afraid you'd tell me it was too late, that I'd hurt you too badly to ever come back." Margaret finds her voice finally, interrupting his litany of self-recrimination with the words she's been practicing in her heart for 10 years. "David, sweetheart, there is nothing you could ever do that would make me stop loving you, nothing you could fail at that would change how proud I am to be your mother. You are my son, and that love doesn't come with conditions or expiration dates or requirements for success." The silence that follows is different from all the silences that came before it, filled not with absence, but with presence, with the sound of two people breathing together across phone lines, connected again after years of existing in separate worlds. She can hear him crying now, deep sobs that sound like grief and relief mixed together into something that might eventually become healing. "I'm sorry, Mom," he whispers, the words she's been waiting to hear but never demanded, never required as a condition for loving him. "I'm so sorry for all the birthdays I missed, all the calls I didn't make, all the years I let you think I didn't care about you, when you were the first person I thought about every morning and the last person I thought about every night." They talk for 3 hours that first night, filling in the gaps that 10 years created between them, sharing stories and explanations and apologies that flow both ways across the phone line, like a current that connects them in ways that feel both new and familiar, like coming home to a place that's been kept exactly as you left it, waiting for your return. 2 weeks after that first phone call, Margaret stands at her kitchen window watching a car pull into her driveway, her heart beating with the same anticipation she felt on Christmas mornings when David was small and the day held nothing but possibility and joy. She spent the intervening days cleaning the house obsessively, cooking his favorite foods, buying the groceries she remembers him loving, though she knows 10 years might have changed his tastes along with everything else. David emerges from the car slowly, and she can see time's passage written in his face, in the gray threading through his hair, in the way he carries himself, like someone who has learned that life can break you if you're not careful. But his smile is the same one she's been missing, the same expression that used to greet her every morning when he was young and she was the center of his universe. He carries flowers, daisies like the ones he used to pick from the neighbor's garden when he was 7 years old, and a small cake from the bakery downtown, where she used to take him for birthday treats when money was tight but love was abundant. The sight of these simple gifts breaks something loose in her chest, 10 years of carefully controlled emotions suddenly flowing free. When he knocks on the door, she doesn't wait to answer it formally, instead throwing it open and pulling him into her arms, both of them crying and laughing and apologizing and forgiving all at the same time, making up for lost embraces, lost conversations, lost years that suddenly feel less lost now that they're standing together in the doorway where he used to wait for the school bus. They spend the afternoon talking and eating cake and looking through photo albums, filling in the spaces that silence created between them, building bridges across the decade that tried to separate them permanently. Margaret realizes that love doesn't diminish with time or distance, doesn't expire or spoil or lose its potency, even when it's not actively expressed or reciprocated or acknowledged for years at a time. As the sun sets, David promises to visit again next week and the week after that, and Margaret knows that some things that break can be mended, that some distances can be crossed, that some loves are strong enough to survive even the longest silences and still bloom again when given the chance to grow. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video. It helps more people find stories like this one. Subscribe to Voices After 50 for more true emotional tales about love, time, and second chances. And before you go, watch the next story on our channel, another unforgettable journey about the ties that time can never break.